Let's all host, let's all host, let's all host. What's the scoop? What's the scoop? What's the scoop? Let's all host, let's all host, let's all host. What's the scoop? What's the scoop? What's the scoop? Keep it 1000, I'm so A1 with the T.
Yo, what's going on, Hoops Tribe? My name is Cassie Chantel. This is another edition of WNBA Headlines. This is a special edition, though, because I got one of my favorite couch coaches. I'm gonna just call this the Couch Coach Edition, Coach Bebe. And before we get into everything, I just want to give a rundown of what this show is going to be about. We got a lot of hot topics today. We're going to definitely talk about Game 1, New York versus Minnesota. We're going to get into Courtney Williams and her backstory and coming from a smaller town, youth basketball, and what makes a point guard a point God. But before we get into all that, I just want Coach Bebe to give us an introduction of who you are and what you do.
Again, my name is Coach Bebe, Patrice Marshall. I'm a basketball coach, professional basketball coach and trainer. And then also AAU basketball. I mean, I've pretty much done every level. I'm from Sapulpa, Oklahoma, played professional basketball in the WBA.
Nice. So how long have you been coaching youth basketball?
Ooh, I started coaching, actually training basketball when I was 14 years old. So about 38 years.
Oh, dang. Now that's a lot of experience.
Yeah, I had my first team when I was 19. I started coaching for Sapulpa Middle School when I was 22, 23, right around the time I started playing professional basketball. So I've been having teams ever since then.
Dope. So I personally got to know you through one of your groups on Facebook. And can you tell us more about that Facebook group and how you got started with that?
Right, WNBA Real Spill. Um, Man, the reason why I got so tired of going into other supposedly basketball chat rooms and whatnot and not truly being able to talk basketball. It was more or less racially motivated or um, just kind of, I don't know, a lot of vitriol going on. You know what I mean? It just wasn't basketball. And if you said anything constructive criticism, then you were considered a hater or something of that sort. So I just kind of got tired of being in that environment and wanted to kind of be able to provide a space where you could talk about basketball, in the manner that you would like to, you know what I mean, without it having to be hateful and spiteful, and keeping it fun and interesting, providing information about players and, of course, talking about the games and their skills and constructive criticism, what may or may happen, may not happen on the teams, drafts and things like that. I just want to, bring the old feel back to it. I'm an old head, old school, so I didn't like where it was going, so I want to create my own space.
And I love that because you're one of the few groups that I haven't got kicked out of. So shout out to WNBA Real Spill for having that safe space and just letting people speak freely, but also constructively. So we actually talking basketball. But game 1 of the finals, a historic game in its own right, in several different ways historic. What are your first thoughts? Because for me, I'm just how did New York blow an 18-point lead in that type of a game?
It seemed like at first they kind of got, how you get a little cocky,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And you know that you're a bigger team, you have a little bit more experience on your team, especially when it comes to Olympians and things of that nature. So I think when they initially just came out running, I think that they felt like that was how the game was just gonna go. But the game is always a run. So when Minnesota went on the run, I just think they started becoming sloppy, not really taking care of the ball, not staying aggressive, especially offensively, passing out a lot of easy looks that was what was keeping them ahead in the first place. Just a lot of I thought was just I can't even call it inexperience, just a lot of mistakes that I thought that they should have made.
And what's crazy is that the media analysts are harping on this is a mature New York team, but to me they just they didn't seem that mature, and they weren't acting like they've been in that moment before. But I know it has a lot to do with Minnesota defense, and I have to give a lot of props to Minnesota. And really, when I look at it, even though Minnesota was down by that much, they never looked rattled to me. Like, they always look like poised in the situation. Like, you could see some frustration after some like simple mistakes, but they, for the most part, they stayed poised, and they still were shooting well. Like, they finished the game shooting more than 50%. In that first quarter, they were down by like 16 points at one point. I think they ended the quarter down by 13, but they were shooting 50% in that quarter off of a not a lot of attempts. So they're just so disciplined, and people underestimate how much discipline matters in these type of situations. That's why I have Minnesota winning the entire thing, because I think that discipline is key, and especially a disciplined team that has that level of talent. Like, when you got discipline and then you got talent and athleticism, it's just like the recipe that's a recipe for a championship to me. And I think they've been the most disciplined team in the league all season, and it's just showing in this moment. So what do you think going into game 2? We know there's going to be some adjustments to be made. Like, what adjustments do you feel New York needs to make going into game 2?
Well, I don't really think New York is really all that experienced. I mean, they have Olympians for sure, but they have Phoebe, which is, she's an older rookie, but she's still a rookie, learning the difference between European and American basketball. And then they had her guard in court, Courtney. She cannot guard C Dub. She just, you would like for her to because of her length, but she's just too slow to guard C Dub. I don't think that New York may have an answer for that. Um, but that's probably a change that they definitely need to move Friedrich off of C Dub.
Interesting. Like, I didn't even think of that, because she was definitely getting crossed up like a few times. She got crossed up, but her size was bothering Courtney. I feel like in the beginning, like maybe a little bit in those first couple of
Affected her
minutes.
mid-range game. It affected her mid-range game. You know what I mean? But it definitely didn't affect her ability to attack the basket, to utilize her teammates to get that three-point shot off.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like they got caught in that double team just a couple of times in that first quarter, and then it was like that timeout happened, and Reeve was able to like make that adjustment really quickly.
And then Sabrina, she shot really poorly. I don't, even though she's been in the league for a few years, this is really her second time. You would like to say that first time gives you experience. It gives you some, you know what I mean, but it definitely doesn't give you enough to manifest throughout the whole time. That I don't think that she's going to shoot so poorly. Um, the entire playoff either. So it'd be interesting to see what she does for the next game.
And when we say shoot poor, I just want to say she took ill-advised shots. Like, yet she shot poorly. She shot 8 for 26. And it's just like the shots that she was taking was just not good shots. And if we're gonna make any type of comparison to Caitlin Clark, that was the moment that Rebecca Lobo and Ryan Rucco could have really plugged in, because she was shooting like Caitlin Clark. They say it any other time, but they ain't say it in that moment. And that was a moment that they really could have brought that up. It was just a lot of ill-advised threes from deep, and it's like you're gassed at this point. So yeah, I think just them buckling down and finding their. I'm sorry, what was it?
I said fear is just the truth at this point. And Stewie had a chance and she blew it twice. So the cards may just be leaning toward a different planetarium when it comes to Minnesota Lynx going ahead and taking the lead of that 5 for the WNBA and leading the WNBA championships. It just might be their time, and New York might just be what is that girl off of All My Children or something like that. She was always nominated but never won. What's her name? Susan Lucci. It might be New York. You know what I mean?
Yo, all that pettiness they did to my aces, like, I would not even I wouldn't be mad. I'm rooting on their downfall indefinitely. So I got Minnesota to win this. Not even just because of being petty, but really, I don't understand ESPN, because ESPN has New York projected like by a substantial amount. I think it was like 60% odds in winning these games. And I don't see it. Minnesota has dominated this matchup like all season. So I don't understand what analytics they're looking at because it ain't matching my numbers and I don't see it.
Yeah, they have. I just thought that New York would probably, well, since they had been turning up a notch, to be honest, I just thought that they would keep that dial up. Um, but Minnesota, I mean, New York, would keep that dial up, but Minnesota seemed to, prove that they got another dial that they can turn up too. So, yeah, their defense was definitely on point. I still think New York's size is still going to be something that they're going to have to deal with. But it's going to be interesting to see, what happens if they can steal in Minnesota because it might just be over in Minnesota.
Courtney Williams though, like Courtney Williams in that shot though, that 4 point play was crazy. She comes from Folkestone, Georgia. Like shout out to Georgia for one. Like I'm from the South. I'm from Georgia, so shout out to that. So I already love her down for that. But coming from a small town is something that I can really relate to, and it's just amazing that she only got one college. She only got one college offer. One college offer.
Did did she play? She had to play some type of AU, right? Some type of summer competitive basketball.
It doesn't sound like that. It sounds like she played high school ball. She got one offer from University of South Florida. She was about to go to the military. Like she wasn't even about to play basketball. She was about to go to the military and then she received that offer letter.
I don't think it's much to do because I'm from a small town. My town has like 30,000 people in it. You know what I mean? So, but we produce athletes. We produce D1 players in Sapulpa, Oklahoma, 5 state championships. Let me throw that out there. Um, but I think sometimes that it's more of a drive to what the coach or even the atmosphere of the school that you're going to, the connections and whatnot, and sometimes whether or not you play AAU basketball. If you can get on an AAU team and get in a few of these circuit tournaments, get it where these college scouts are going, then it's very hard that you're not going to get seen and get offers, even if it's from small schools. So I'd have to ask whether or not she was in that type of environment. Because heck, I can get a kid a scholarship to a small school somewhere. So it's definitely got to be whether or not the coaches was really putting that out there for her, or whether or not she was on an AAU team.
For me, like I know in my situation, I'm from Athens, Georgia, and it's primarily known as a football town. And I think you're absolutely right when it comes down to like the coaches and the school. But I think when people are from smaller towns, it makes it so much harder to be seen if that town is or that school isn't already known for pushing out like like if a prominent basketball player hasn't come out of that situation already, it's so hard to be seen if you're not like in a larger town. And I realized that like it really hit home for me because I recently went to an overtime select game where it's basically like professional high school players, and that blew my mind. Like it was in Atlanta, they have their own arena, and it functions just like the Atlanta Dream. Like really, the arena is really about the same size, and I'm just thinking like, man, like if we had this type of situation when I was coming up, like just to see that, just to know that I can aspire to that, because it's like first of all, the Atlanta Dream wasn't even a team until 2008. I was a junior going into my senior year of high school. So my mom is like not even thinking that the WNBA is a possibility. It's a realistic thing. And I think that's what people in smaller towns, like we don't have that to aspire to. If we can't see it, we can't be it. And it's like, we don't even know that it's possible. So that's what people, I feel like in larger towns or from those situations where they have that already in place, have an advantage versus someone from a small town, because it's just not, it doesn't even seem like a realistic thing.
I would definitely say access would play a big part in that too, and whether or not you have access to facilities or even just that somebody looks like me type of atmosphere. A basketball playing. Oklahoma is a football country. You know what I mean? It's football country, but we just happen to also produce some athletes that have gone to the NBA as well, like Tulsa. from John Starks to Wayman Tisdale to my cousin is Richard Dumas. We produce a lot in Tulsa, so I think that kind of gives my little town a little more of an advantage because it is close and does play in the districts where these schools will play. So it's one of those, they may have come to see this certain athlete, but they get to see you. You know what I mean? So I think, like I said, access and definitely being able to be in that environment would definitely play a part in whether or not someone from a small school gets known. And then you have to be just as talented. Oh my God, you have to be so talented, and you have to self market.
Right.
The days are pretty gone where kids forget to write the coaches and send out their own videos and market themselves and try to get their own scholarship. They wait for people to come to them.
If you're hearing this and you're a kid in high school, just know you got to put in a lot of groundwork. It's possible even if you're not in a larger city. You just got to put in a lot of extra work. But shout out to all the small towns out there, and shout out to the University of South Florida, because if it wasn't for y'all, we wouldn't be getting this greatness that that is
Straight
Corey
up.
Williams. Yeah. But moving into the point guard versus point guard conversation, what is that definition? Because it's been a lot of controversy this year specifically because of course the point guard name was given to Chelsea Gray from the great Candace Parker, and then some people tried to reclaim it and rename it and give it to Caitlin Clark at one point. So what is a point guard to you?
Well, I mean, when you're a point guard, you have to have an extremely high level of skill. Um, that's number one. Your skill and your performance, the your ball handling, your IQ, your defense, your mid-range game. You have to be able to pass. You have to have court vision. So if you're slacking in in some of those areas, then that's kind of going to eliminate you from the point guard conversation. Um, I like Caitlin Clark. I give her fans a hard time. She's a quirky player. She doesn't have a lot of natural athletic looking ability. But her stop and go is one of those things where, what you know how to do, you know how to do really well. So it's hard for people to stop you from doing it. So um, I think that's what Caitlin Clark does. She has very good court vision. Her passing is great, but I think she tries to make too many other great plays instead of just making the good play. I think that's one of the things that, even though Chelsea can sometimes have uh, some high turnovers, she doesn't have that many when it comes to the all around outlook of the game. She doesn't try to always make the great play. She makes great passes. You know what I'm saying? And I think there's a fine line on the difference between making a great play and making a great pass. Um, but that also comes with IQ, defense to bring it. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where uh, when you're not, when you can't check all the boxes, you can't be a point guard. You know what I mean? You just can't be a point guard if you can't check all the boxes. So
I feel like honestly, like based off that definition though, I will say that Caitlin Clark has a bright future in getting to that level. I think, like you
yeah,
said, she has to cut down on her turnovers and some of the riskiness. But it's at the same time, I like the riskiness. Like I like that she's willing to take that risk in time because I've seen Chelsea Gray do very similar things. She doesn't do it on a as frequently, and then she also has more composure. I feel like because of her experience, so it doesn't look as bad even when she does do it. Like she's not like, I don't know, the reaction that Chelsea Gray has when she makes an error versus when Caitlin Clark makes an error is a testament, I feel like, to maturity. And I feel like once Caitlin Clark, or if this is just potential. I don't know if she will actually do it, but if she matures and if she continues to progress at the level that she's progressing, like I definitely feel like she can get to that point guard level. I think they need to slow up a little bit with throwing it around right now, but we'll see.
definitely, to me, I think that she has a very, very bright future. I'm not going to give her a chance right now to even be in the point guard conversation until she can show me that she can play just as much defense and have heart on that end. I think that's the point part of it. You know, I don't know a point guard that doesn't take as much pride in offense as they do in defense. You know what I mean? Like defense first. It's always a defense first mentality with a point guard, and give me my ball back. You know what I mean? So I'm thinking that until she develops that type of attitude, like I'm just not gonna let you score on me type of attitude, um, and stop standing in the pocket, stop getting lost in the game when the ball is not around her or in her hands. You know what I mean? So once she develops that, and that's gonna take a little bit longer than just the natural skill of the game. You know what I mean? Because if you don't have that defensive instinct right now, it's hard to just go get it. You know what I mean? So she's going to have to really spend some time on making that a focus of her game. I think once she does, she'll easily, and I mean easily, be a 25 point per game. She'll be one of the first players that average 20 something point per game as a guard. You know what I mean, in the WNBA. So, and I mean as a for a long tenure, because I know Donna Taurasi got close, but then she fell off. So I think Caitlin has a real opportunity to average 25 points per game. 8, 9, 10 assists, real easy. But once she gets that turnover down, once she quit allowing her player to get just as many points, that'll change the conversation for
Facts. And like they always say, defense is a will and a want to, but it's also a physical capability. And I feel like a lot of the reasons why she took off on defense, I don't know if it's really 100% like her not having that instinct, but I feel like it's also her having the stamina and like having the stamina to play both ends of the court is not easy, especially at the pace of the WNBA. And then that curve that she went from college to the WNBA and like having to really fight through that fatigue. So I'm interested to
it.
see
Right.
what this off season is gonna get like the rest of the off season and her being able to get into the gym, the weight room in the off season and really build her stamina. What is that going to do for her defensively? Now, if she come out in her sophomore season and still ain't playing defense, then then I don't know. I feel like that would say a lot about what she wants in her career and what type of player she
For
wants to
sure.
be. But yeah, I completely agree with that. Yeah, but I mean, really, that's the bulk of the conversation for me. I'm very interested to see what the rest of the Hoops Tribe has to say about everything that we covered today. I really appreciate you coming on like the first edition of my Couch Coaches podcast. And
Right
that was,
on.
yeah, it was one of my favorites. I really love what you're doing as far as with the online basketball community because that's a part of growing the game as well, and people can't overlook that. So I'm want to give you your flowers for that for sure.
For sure, for sure. Let me get a shout out to Russia and Sylvia Crawley and Bridget Pettis and Tamika Dixon and Toto Byers and Crystal Robinson and just a few of my WNBA friends that I keep in touch with. Give a shout out to them. Um, if it wasn't for me being able to play against, that iron sharpens iron, or it wasn't for me being able to play against them, I wouldn't have had the connection to shout out to Lightning Mitchell, WBA, one of the trailblazers that started the league for that everybody's talking about now, which is the WNBA. I just want to give a lot of shout out to those who else, Fran Harris for putting us on YouTube, letting the world know about us as well. And thank you, Cassie. You know what I mean? Once I finally saw your videos, and so I couldn't help but just kind of spread the word and get everything out. I love where the direction that you're going. I love what you're doing. Invite me back. You know what I mean? I can't wait until we hooked up. I'm gonna come to Atlanta. We're gonna catch a game. It's gonna be on the crack.
Yeah. As always, folks, let's talk hoops.